I did say to you that I had the privilege of being sent to a good school by my parents. It was a Catholic school. And so one of the things that those priests beat into me was principles that Jesuits believe in. Yeah. And there are 4 principles that they believe in that are relevant in business and are relevant in any organization. And I have found have helped me. The first one is heroism, which is heroic leadership. What is that about? That is about having a vision. So the NDP, having a vision. Knowing where you want to go, aiming for something greater than yourself, and aligning all your activities, your objectives, your principles to that higher principle. And then from time to time, and if possible 3 times a day, checking your to-do list against that vision and that principle. The second one is the principle of indifference. To be indifferent to things, to places, and not be overly attached to possessions or even emotions, particularly negative emotions. The Jesuits speak about living with one foot up, so always being ready to move on. So when they say at Standard Bank, Chief, we've had enough of you, please go. I say, cool, I'm going to find another place to go and ply my trade, by way of example. So living with one foot up. The third one is the principle of love. And love, not love, lovey-dovey, but love in the rough and ready, in the rough and ready sense of having the highest regard and reverence for the humanity of others in the corporate environment. Not worrying about superficial differences, irrelevant characteristics, but focusing on the humanity of others and realizing that the essence of humanity is the living relations between people, communities, the cosmos, and God. And then last, self-awareness. There is a beautiful saying, in fact there are 2, which are the inscriptions at the Oracle of Delphi. They say, know thyself and nothing in excess. Know thyself, you need to know who you are, and that takes us back to the heroism principle. Know who you are, what your values are, what you stand for, and never do things in excess. A couple of points that relate then to leadership in this environment, having regard to those principles and how do they manifest themselves. I would say to you, hard work, commitment, and passion are fundamental. So if you've got clarity of purpose, you've got to know that to meet that purpose, you've got to sacrifice, you've got to work hard, and it often takes a 24/7 commitment. And I don't know if it was Maurice who was talking about balance, or one of the earlier speakers. I've often grappled with the notion of balance, and I've come to the conclusion that it is a myth. There is no such thing. There is appropriate focus at the appropriate time. So on Sunday morning, at 10 o'clock, I think it's inappropriate for me to be reading my board pack. Yeah. I must go to church, and I'm an Anglican, just for the record. Equally, when we're negotiating with Sasol about the interest rate applicable to that loan that we've lent to you, prayer is not going to help. So, and that's not balanced. When we are having that negotiation, it's not balanced. It's a bare-knuckled fight, and we want the highest interest rate as we can get. I think the point I'm making is it's not so much balance that's important, it's what is appropriate at the appropriate time. That's good. Yeah. The next principle, I guess, that would be relevant here is leadership is about creating value, certainly in the context of a business. And again, I'll use the analogy. I work for Standard Bank. The most important thing I have to do for Standard Bank is to make absolutely sure that Standard Bank has the space to sell its products and services, sell them at a price that is acceptable to our clients, and at a return that is acceptable to our shareholders. My job is to create value. It's not to be nice to Sasol, although they are nice folks. No. But you understand what I mean. The job in this context is absolutely about creating value. It's about meeting the needs of our clients and doing so to the best of our ability, and therefore create value for them so that we can extract value for our shareholders, and not being apologetic about it. The next principle I think that arises, again based on the 4 Jesuit principles I was talking about, is treating others with respect and making sure that one creates, to the extent that it is possible, but always aiming to create an environment where the place is collegiate, it is supportive, and where everybody can express themselves fully to their best so that they can perform at their best, regardless of their race, their religion, and where they come from. And that is particularly relevant in the context of the history of our country, where nearly 3 decades after 1994, there is still such a high level of inequality, unemployment, and poverty. And we ought to be asking ourselves, especially those of us in positions of responsibility, how do we contribute to growth? How do we contribute to the entry of more people into our organizations, our businesses? How do we empower other people to express themselves fully? But always remembering, which is something I feel very strongly about, and I expressed in a letter that I wrote to my staff at the beginning of this year. And remembering in that context that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. Yep. What a wonderful sentence. It comes from the preamble to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And I commend that to all of you. When in doubt, go and read the preamble, because it defines our values and what we stand for as South Africa. The other thing, of course, is to remember as a leader that you can't know everything, and that it's important to have a strong team around you. And the best leaders, in my view, are those who know enough to know that they don't know, but have the confidence to know that there are other people who will always know more than them. One of the things I've had to learn, and it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is that it is not possible for me to make decisions on my own, and it is not possible for me to be the cleverest guy in the room. Sometimes I wish I was. But the best performing team have always had, best performing teams I've been part of, have always had people who know better than I do. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you just reflect on it, if you think about the executive committee of a bank, for example, if I know more about, let's say, credit than the head of credit, then there is something wrong at Standard Bank. Because how can I know more about credit than the credit guy when there is marketing that I need to also know about, and human resources, and personal and business banking, and corporate and investment banking? How can I be cleverer than each of those individuals? Because if I am, then it means I've got a very mediocre team around me. And so you have to have people that are better than you in order for you to succeed. And those are always the best performing team. Communicate often and communicate well. As many of you will know, the bank that I work for had a very, very difficult end to last year, and it had a very difficult start to the year. All of that has settled, and I had occasion to talk to Dr. Mlapo about it, cried on his shoulder from time to time. But the issues that started the year so badly were settled. But one of the main things about that was communication. So to communicate openly and directly with our colleagues and our staff, to communicate openly with, we met political parties, we met organs of civil society, and had the courage to look them in the eye and tell them where we stand on racism. And that settled. And I'm happy to say that we were subjected to criticism, severe criticism, but Maurice, the Standard Bank continues to move forward. You have to be brave enough to take tough decisions. One always has to be fair. One always has to be respectful, but you have to take tough decisions. If you ask me what is the toughest decision I've had to make or have been party to, and that is when we had to make a decision to retrench at Standard Bank, a wide-scale retrenchment. It was a difficult period. We went through it, and there are lessons to be learned from that, but it was difficult. You also have to accept when you've made mistakes and own up to them. So another example in our case was we had been building an international business outside the African continent, and our business was growing very fast. In fact, our international operations were bigger than Nedbank. They were bigger than one of the 4 largest banks in the country at that time. And the thing was going like gangbusters. 2007, the financial crisis hit, 2007, 2008. The costs associated with the business were rising faster than the revenues. They reached that point that any self-respecting business person does not want to see, where the costs cross the revenues. Yeah. Cut a long story short, we had to make a decision to say to ourselves, actually, we're an African institution, not an emerging markets institution. We need to get out. Yeah. We admitted it, we've told our shareholders, and we've refocused our business to the African continent because we had to. One has to accept disruption. We're living in a world where we are all going to be racing with machines or racing against machines. Whether you're in the music industry or you are in mining or you are in even law, you are going to face the prospect of digitization and robotics. And the question you have to ask is, how is your business going to make itself ready to work with and work alongside with machines as opposed to competing with them? It's a massive conundrum, and it's something we all, as leaders and as professionals, have to confront. Let me close by saying the one last thing is in the context of always trying to act ethically. The one saying we've got at Standard Bank is always ask yourself, what would it look like on the front page of the Sunday Times or on the front page of the Business Day when making a decision? And that usually will get to the right answer. And when in doubt, say, what will it look like to my grandmother when she reads the Sunday Times before making that decision?